you're staying here because you're hot, and that is it. And it is the reason Raleigh never stepped foot on North Carolina. She insisted he be left behind so that she could enjoy his company. All the men come over, and you know what happens. It goes well. They set up a really nice, thriving colony, but then the Spanish are so upset that the English are challenging them that in 1588 they send the Spanish Armada, the greatest navy the earth has ever seen, to wipe England off the map. And in one of the great upsets in world history, the little English Navy defeats the Spanish Armada, and England is safe. Unfortunately, the English spent every dime defeating the Spanish. They forgot about the colony that they'd set up. They didn't forget about it, but they had no time, no money to get that colony in North Carolina started. We had to keep sending ships out there to give them food because they couldn't grow their own at first. They weren't self-sufficient. But during the war, they put all their money in defeating the Spanish. Finally, 2 years after the war, they send a ship back to resupply the colony in Manteo, North Carolina. And as you all know, when they arrive, not one person. We still do not know what happened to the 136 men, women, and children who had formed the first colony that we now call the Lost Colony. But when they showed up, there was one word written on a tree that didn't help them. They never found them. Most scholars today believe they know what happened to those 136 people. They waited 2 years to get the English to come back, and even though they weren't the sharpest people on earth, after 2 years of waiting, they figure they're not coming. And the only way they could survive was intermarriage with the Native Americans. They probably did. And the proof we have of that, in Robeson County in North Carolina, we have a group of very unusual Native Americans called the Lumbee Indians. There are many unusual things about them, but one of the most unusual is how many of them have blue eyes. It is almost unheard of for Native Americans in large number to have blue eyes. The Lumbees do. And if you ask the Lumbee why his eyes are blue, he will tell you because my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather and mother were intermarried with the English colony, and that is what happened to them, and eventually they become the Lumbee, what we would call the Lumbee Indians. Anyway, the ship, when they can't find anybody, goes back to Sir Walter Raleigh and tells him, bad news, they're gone. Raleigh lost everything in that investment. He said, I am ruined. No, his men said, we couldn't find the colony, but we have brought back gold from what we call North Carolina. Really, says Raleigh? No, it is really, says Raleigh. Really, says Raleigh? No, they said there's no gold there, but it's as good as gold. Come back to the ship and look what we brought you that will make you a fortune. Goes back to the ship, they unload the cargo, and they said, there it is. And Raleigh says, it looks like a mass of stinking weeds to me. Oh no, they said. When the original colonists went, these men went with them. And they noticed the natives of this new world would take this stinking weed, put it in a pipe, and light it. And they told Raleigh, no matter how foul a mood these Native Americans were in, if they smoked enough of it, they were pleasant and happy. And they said, all you have to do is sell this stuff to the English, they're gonna love it. Raleigh said, what is it? And they said, well, the natives called it tobacho. So they changed it to tobacco that you could pronounce. And Raleigh said, this is never gonna work. Nobody's ever smoked before. There had never been a white man in Europe to smoke. And the men said, you're Sir Walter Raleigh. You're a trendsetter. Teach yourself how to smoke. Walk up and down the streets. Look happy. When people say, where'd you get that stuff? You say, oh, I have some. I'll sell it to you. This is all true. Raleigh had nothing to lose. He goes home to his manor house, and one morning he sits in his parlor, the main hall. He puts the weed in for the first time in history, a white man, lights it, and starts smoking. And he eventually gets the hang of it. He's breathing in, he's breathing out. But his manservant comes in the middle of all this, and Raleigh had not told him anything. The manservant sees that his master's head seems to be on fire because smoke is coming out of his nose, and before Raleigh can stop him, the servant picks up a huge slop bucket of water and pours it over Raleigh's head to get rid of the smoke. Now, whether this happened or not, probably kind of iffy. But if you go to Raleigh's manor house today, they will show you the bucket, they will show you the chair, they will show you the stain. If you believe this, I have some land outside of Fuquay Varina I'm trying to get rid of. See me after this talk. It's probably nonsense, but it is true that Raleigh is the first Englishman to smoke. He is such a trendsetter that he does tell people what a wonderful weed this is. They buy it from him. He has a monopoly, and to show you how successful he was, by the year of his death, 1619, there was not one church in all of England that did not have a sign on its wall that read, "No smoking during services." It caught on in 20 years, and they're still smoking today. It is how Raleigh recouped the money that he had lost from the lost colony. Well, I was told 25 minutes, and indeed 25 minutes are about up. Gosh, there's so many more fascinating things to say about Raleigh, but we'll save that. Oh, but you won't be here again. Well, maybe you're slow and you'll be back in the first year college. Maybe I could do the second half next year. In any case,